on YouTube, and we're live on Periscope. Okay. To everybody out there, hello, hola, konnichiwa, salam, ciao, namaste. Peace to all. This is the Pink Elf in the Room conversation. And just for Mally Moonchild, she waved hi. I want to say hi back to you, Mally. Um, what we will be talking about today is the ideal or the ideology of the good guy and the bad guy, the good girl and the bad girl. It doesn't matter how you place this one way or another. It's the factor that we've made it into that there are good people, there are bad people in a sense, and we've played this game over and over and over in so many ways, and to the point where we put it in our own life, our own ideology of what we see people. We don't go through an ideology of seeing people simply by observation. We see due to our moral standards of what we feel is right or wrong, we put in place as being good or bad, right or wrong in a sense. But we don't see everything as relative. We only see it as an absolute. That this is what, when you ever, for example, whenever you see maybe a cartoon or whenever you see a movie, most of them portray easily who the good guy is, that this guy's heroic, this guy's trying to be something more, etc., etc., and then who the bad guy is, that this person is doing X, Y, and Z, and he's malicious or she's malicious, has no care or concern. And the problem with that is that it dulls your insight on truly how people really are. And it allows us to immediately judge people based off of that you have to be bad based off of this, or you have to be good. We don't look at it in a sense that, truth be told, that due to whatever has happened to that person in their past life that led them to this ideology, that led them to this part. And of course there are different mental issues that can lead people to act a certain way, but at the same time, the question would be, what right would I have to judge that if I don't know you like that? Or, and that's something you have to be very observant of, is the fact. So when we look at superhero movies, that's one example of that. But the other example is what I call the Disney effect. When you show little children, especially little girls, princesses all the time, and that this is what you need to be and everything, and that woman keeps in her mind that she needs to find a man who is a Prince Charming instead of finding what is needed. You may look for your Prince Charming, but find someone who is definitely not good for you. And you have to get out of that mindset, because it's not about how all the time how the person looks and everything. Looks are one thing, but it's beyond the surface of the person, of who you're dating, that means much more. Who are they to you? You can say all day that you're looking for a white knight in shining armor, etc., etc., but that's what you may desire, but what you want might be separate. And this is where we go back to our ideology. We say one thing but do another. We want one thing but we go for another. We want someone special in our life, but yet when you have that ideology, when you talk about the Disney effect, especially with princesses and everything, and it can go the same way for guys trying to be heroic in a sense. There's no need for any of those things. Even I was like that back in the day, the white knight type of guy. But the truth is, there's no need for it. What you need more than anything is to be who you are, truly and especially authentic to you. It doesn't matter what other people say or do. People are gonna, one way or another, and that's the hard part for people. People who are genuinely good and they're not perfect, They may, maybe someone has something to say about them or whatnot. They're not perfect, but the thing is, if you strive to be your kindness, your peace, your unconditional love, you will get there. But you have to keep that in mind. You have to be that. Don't look for the television shows to tell you, the celebrities to tell you, the politicians to tell you what you should and shouldn't be, but it should come from within yourself. We have such an ideology that affects us on so many lengths of what a person thinks. Um, for example, I believe there was a story not too long ago. Yeah. There was a story about, I believe, the director from the Guardians of the Galaxy and how he had said some cruel jokes that got him in a lot of trouble and ended up getting him kicked out of his position with Disney. Now, many people disagree that that should have never happened. And that too is in itself an ideology of the whole good guy bad guy mentality. We'll strive to make a problem out of something if someone else says it. It's like the person who runs away and says fire, and then everybody else runs away and starts screaming fire because that one person. You have to go past that instead of looking for a problem just because someone else says it. Actually dealing with yourself and being yourself, because that alone is like a game of manipulation over and over that you're playing. You're pretty much like a dog chasing its tail. You're going around in circles trying to find a problem. And that shouldn't be your issue, is to look for problems. It should be because what you see in others, you see in yourself. If you look for problems, then there are probably problems within yourself that you haven't been willing to look at, that have been around you in a sense. Or perhaps you see them and you're trying to hide them. And that's where you focus on self. Self love, self dedication to you and growing you. Not to try to be the good guy that the thing is too, good shouldn't have to have a standard. It should just simply be in a sense, like, for example, if everybody is you, just with different problems, different situations, how would you treat yourself? That is a question you should ask yourself simply. And don't hesitate to comment, any of you guys, if you have an answer to it. But the thing is, there should be no reason to tell yourself I'm a good person or reason to tell yourself you're a bad person. Give or take what your actions are to show your kindness. If you truly care for people, you'll do what's necessary to be generous. You'll do what's necessary to be peaceful, but you'll be being it. You won't be doing these things because it'll be so automatic to you in a sense to do them that you'll just automatically go out there and do those things as though it was second nature. And even when we talk about different ideologies, the thing is, we'll consider someone bad based on perhaps an ideology, but the thing is, even in that, you can't consider something bad if you have no understanding of it. And I'm not talking about like you met someone, you know them, and you've seen some stuff, but I'm talking about simply because that could be true for some people. They've met someone like, well, hey, I've seen a guy did some things that weren't too nice, and that might be the truth. But when you're watching television shows, or when it's a he said, she said moment, and then people are like, well, that person is a horrible, and you don't even know that person, or you don't know those people from that country, or whatever it is. The the thought process to keep that in mind is ridiculous because you have no clue. You're judging someone based off of something you do not know. And because you're doing that in a sense, that reflects on who you are as a person. If you have to judge other people, you are simply judging yourself and the cycle continues. So, how do we break that? It's a pretty simple thing. Simply by, first of all, not judging people, and second, observing people. Third, being unconditionally loving to people. Why are these so important? When you're not judging people, you are now taking the time to actually analyze the situation and really know who they are. On top of that, you are seeing that what you see in others, you see in yourself. So when you're not judging people in any sense, in any essence, you're actually seeing more that of yourself, not judging. Because what you give to others, you give to yourself in a sense. So if you're making sure not to give judgment because you understand you have no right, and that people, every person has their journey. And that is something that most of us do not understand. We feel, due to the status quo of what's been taught to us, that if you don't have life right by X, Y, and Z amount of years, then you are not what we would call one of the best. And we got a message from Mally saying, we're taught to judge from babies. How do we break that cycle from birth? And no, and that's a good question right there. I wouldn't say, however, that we're taught that as babies. We're taught that more so as toddlers, because as babies we're still trying to comprehend things in this world. When we're toddlers, those are things we're taught, such as, oh, don't touch that because X, Y, and Z can happen. Don't talk to that person because they're bad or whatnot. And the interesting thing about children, and this isn't something so easily learned by children as they're toddlers, it takes time, several years to build up to that point, is the fact that the beauty of children, they are just literally so loving, so kind, and so unafraid of what goes on in the world. They don't see it the way we see it. And all I could say to break that cycle is just teaching it to those children around you little by little, and taking it gently, because it is a difficult cycle to break for those people who are awakening, such as myself. I'm a part of that cycle in a sense. The way I broke it was simply by what I was doing. Do do your research constantly and consistently, Matt. Always look to strive to observe first, because we don't have really the right to judge people. We have no clue about what people do and what they don't do. We don't know their life. But being very observant of those things, even people in your life, if there are people who are connected to you and want to grow in that sense, the same thing would go for them. Being observant of that. We don't have a right to judge people. Everybody is going through their own things. Even when you have children, um there's so much judgment even on that, about, oh well, you have your first child, you're not a good parent or anything. And what I love when I hear people say that is the fact that either you were once there, or the fact remains that when you have your first children or your first child, it's not a walk in the park. Especially when you're young adults, because of the fact that you're still growing. Most people don't realize that humans are not adults. No matter what age you are, whether you feel you're somewhere in your teens, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, maybe your 70s, you become an adult. But as far as who you are now, you are still growing into truly what an adult is. And why is that? Because you have still not understood the fullness of your intelligence, the fullness of your wisdom, and that is going to take time to grow, because you are physically better off than most people at that age, where they are mentally better off, and you are constantly and consistently growing. And the, even what I'm saying right now is a simple fact of what would need to see within people, that you are constantly growing. What right would you have to judge someone if you don't realize that everybody is growing at a different level for themselves? And yes, it does take time for some people. Yes, it does take time to observe and so on and so forth. But if you're really putting in the necessary work to get to that point of who you are, you will get there. Um, but you have to be observant of it first, by just simply realizing there is no such thing as good or bad. Good or bad is based off of what you choose to experience. We've created good and bad, and we've implemented different routes to what good and bad is, give or take where you live, what location you're at, what your sex may be, in a sense, your sexuality might be, what your religion might be, what your race might be, in a sense, that all play a key role in all those roots of what may be considered good or bad in any essence of the world. So it all depends on you, in a sense, to decide what's good or bad. But then you have to ask yourself, how would you know that when none of these things exist? And some people might think, well, how is that possible if none of these things exist? Because everything is an experience. You literally created what you consider to be good and evil and turned it into experience, because it's a game. You can't know hot without knowing cold. You can't know big without knowing small. You can't know good without knowing bad. You're playing that game and cycle with you. So now that we're at that point, you might want to break the cycle because of the fact of what it, especially on top of how primitive we are at this point in time, especially. We have a superiority complex, believing we are the biggest, powerful creatures on this planet. Whether that's so or not, we we beat our chest believing we are the best, and we kill our planet, which is the only way for us to thrive. We will kill someone if they are giving information that we feel is bad for giving to people. We will tell people that and enforce that because that's what we believe is the truth. When none of that helps anything. You have to realize that just because someone disagrees with you does not mean that you get the right to do harm to them. They're you in a different form, in a different manner, in comparison to you. You are capable of seeing them as they are. And whether you have disagreements or whatever it is with any person you meet across the way, taking the time to understand people around you will be what helps you grow into who you are fully and bypass what is good and bad. Instead of seeing people in relationships you want to be in, instead of seeing that person is good or bad in any sense, you see them for what you either observe or simply as they are going on their journey. Because, like I said, there are some people you might already have observed, and you might say, you might see in a sense, that does not work for me. So, that doesn't mean if someone's a horrible person in a sense, and I use that term loosely in a sense because of the fact of the wording, that doesn't mean that they're they might not be perfect, but they might not be for you. So that means you need to walk away from that situation. So, because if it is affecting you or harming the self within you, then it might not be beneficial for you to be around that type of energy, because of the fact that you should be very careful of the company you keep around you. Your energy is beneficial to you because this is your experience being who you are. So, when you're around certain people and you feel upset because they're upset, or you feel angry because they feel angry, and it might not just be them, maybe it's them and a bunch of other people they bring around you, and all of a sudden you feel this way, and so on and so forth. You need to be careful of the company you keep your energy in check for you, because it's you who has the control within. So taking that time to know who's around you. If you keep five angry people around you, you will be the you'll be the sixth. If you bring five negative people around you, you will be the sixth. If you bring five positive people around you, you will be the sixth. If you bring five intellectual people, five wealthy people, you will be the sixth. Be careful of the company you keep, because it can turn you into who you desire to be, or it can mold you into something you don't desire to be. You have to be willing to see the beauty within yourself to know how to bypass what good and bad is, that they don't exist. Are no victims on this planet. There are experiences and there are things that are so called as you experience as good and bad because this is what you're doing right now. That doesn't mean that whatever has happened to you is a bunch of flawed messes that isn't real. This is an experience no matter if they harm you, no matter if they love you, no matter if they broke your heart, no matter if they broke your heart. One way or another, it's all experience in play. So choose your experiences wisely in what you desire. Don't see them as good or bad, but see them as people going on their journey. See them simply as something for you to understand. It, especially if something for you to understand if that so serves you to grow where you desire to be. If you desire to find wealth, does it serve you to have certain people around you, certain energy around you? If you desire to have love in your life, does it is it right for you in a sense, or better yet, does it work for you in a sense to have that specific person if you feel they may have negative thought process or they may be very pessimistic? Is that something that you need around you in a sense? See the energy around you and you will see everything as it is. Look inside you and see that beauty. See how amazing. See the magnificence of who you really are. We got another message from Mally from Instagram. How do you heal from a traumatic experience with a negative person? Sorry, I have a lot of questions. No, keep your questions coming. If you have any questions, go ahead. Because, like, I'm happy to answer your questions, period. So, you said, how do you heal from a traumatic experience with a negative person? Um, you heal by taking time to yourself. And in my own experience, that is still something I am learning today is taking time to yourself to heal yourself, to love yourself. Whether it means going out to somewhere you enjoy, eating certain foods you like, cooking something you enjoy, going out and skating, going out to the beach, whatever, going out into nature, whatever relaxes you to get to know you better. Because meditating, especially, taking time to sit down with yourself and get to know yourself better. Because a lot of us don't take our time to seriously sit down with ourselves. We don't sit down and think, well, I felt X, Y, and Z or X, Y, and Z happened. When you take time to yourself, and on top of that, not just taking time, keeping your body in good health. You have to understand your health is your wealth. When you are keeping your body in check, right? Like right now, for me, I'm working on an experiment where I'm doing more of a raw vegan diet um, to boost my energy. And I've noticed a difference because of it. But for people out there, um, what you eat plays a key role in how you feel. Taking time to exercise, taking time to meditate, taking time to be with yourself plays a key role in whatever traumatic experience you've been in. Because when you're now more focused on the self and loving yourself, I mean, I'll even go as far as to say, and I've said this before in here, um, go and look for Mally, what you were saying. Go and look in the mirror at some time and tell yourself, like, I'm gonna love you no matter what. Because I remember I did that at one point, and even through a lot of the traumatic experiences I've even been through, even to this very day, a lot of crazy stuff. I love that you have to be willing to give yourself that unconditional love, and sometimes you have to realize that having patience with yourself and giving yourself some credit. That's a hard thing for a lot of us to do. And actually this even plays with the good and the bad guy type of ideology. giving yourself some credit is vitally important to your building. People are going to call you, oh, you're just being like, you have a big ego, you're being egotistical. No, you have to love yourself first before anybody else, because how are you going to love anyone if you don't know how to love yourself first? How are you going to make sure you can get through traumatic experiences if you can't grow that love within self? um you have to be willing to love who you are, no matter what anyone says, so that you can heal. Once you start healing and getting past that, it's going to feel, in a sense, like nothing that person says matter, because especially when you get to that point of unconditional love within self, no matter what anybody says out there in the world, it won't affect you anymore. It'll be bliss to you, because you'll see it and you'll analyze it for what it is, that it's an experience of another soul, what they're going through right now when they're upset or anything, that some people are not fully awakened or fully remembering who they are, in a sense, that you're still growing, you're still learning, you're still becoming that unconditional love within self. And if you have any more questions besides that, please don't hesitate right now to actually ask more questions. But you have to be willing to see that love within self, no matter what, because you're never going to make it until you push yourself past that. We got Asley R on here who waved hi on Instagram, and I want to say hi to you. You have to be willing to push yourself to love who you are. Um, Love is vitally important. There are two things in this world, which is love and fear. And yes, we extend them, love and fear, based off of the good guy and the bad guy ideology, in a sense. What a good guy is someone who is loving and whatnot, is what we believe, and what a bad guy is someone who's fearing, someone who uses fear, in a sense. But at the same time, you can also use the ideology for other areas. It doesn't just have to be there. For love, someone can use love in a sense of what you call bad to create, um what do you call it, sort of an addiction for someone. This is where we've talked about when you have a person who is gaslighting, or when you have people who are sociopaths or psychopaths who use that ideology in the same sense. This is why it's important to show observation, love, and understanding, because of what you don't know, in a sense. That we just feel, no, the good guy is the loving guy, the caring guy, and so on and so forth. But how would you know that? Have you ever checked and seen it from the other side? Have you ever seen what other people done using love and fear in opposite forms of what you consider as the good guy or the bad guy mentality? That is something to look at, that is very important to understand the bigger picture of things around you. That, for example, the bad guy might have to be the bad guy for the simple fact of the situation he's been through, or she's been through. Due to whatever's happened to her life, she may feel cautious about things. She might act in a certain way, and people might feel that she's mean, cruel, or rude, but she's not purposely like that. She's willing to share her heart, but it's the fact that how we see it. Like, here's a story I heard um a few days ago. It was about a kitten. The kitten's name, or the cat's name, I'm sorry, was Ugly. Ugly was in a neighborhood where many of the people threw rocks at him. Many of the people harmed the cat, and many animals harmed the cat. He had a broken hand and everything. He had part of his skin torn up and everything. And that's why they called him Ugly. He was pretty much the community cat, in a sense. And the thing about this guy that blew my mind was how many people threw stuff at him based off of how he looked, and he was always coming up to people, licking them. And one time, though, there was a woman, I believe, who heard ugly in the backyard with two huskies, and he was being torn up by them. And by the time she got down there, he was bleeding and everything. He literally crawled as far as he could up to her cheek and started licking her. And the beauty of the story was simply, no matter how hard why is it so important to give people the love they truly deserve? Because of the fact that in our world, there's a lot of people who don't get that. They don't get that chance. And we got Ashley R, what she said is, yes, the voice of knowledge, the ideal of believing a lie of perspective. Exactly. You see, when you see someone, and I like how you put that. I really do. It's your perspective. So when we see someone ugly and we just shun them, we consider them to be in some way, shape, or form what we call bad for us. So now we've created a scenario based on our experience where we have turned someone who perhaps just desires love and affection, who has now been shunned by either your family, or a group of people. And no, you're very welcome. But we shun that person. You see beauty where you want to see beauty. And that's what I mean by the good guy and bad guy on top of that. To add to that, you see beauty where you want to see beauty, and you see ugliness where you want to see ugliness. But you don't realize that there's beauty in everyone. That is why I constantly say, you are beautiful, you are amazing, you are divine, you are magnificent. Because there are no ugly people out there. There are just different perspectives that other people have, no matter who they are out there. And to add on to what I'm saying about the unconditional love, so many of us are not willing to receive unconditional love. And that is based on your ideology of what unconditional love should be with conditions. That unconditional love with conditions is good and unconditional love is bad. And I've seen this far too often where, and this is something I very much have observed, where a person who is willing to be unconditionally loving, if you don't have X, Y, and Z, you are not good enough, and that is bad. And we have something for Asler. I am, you are, we are. Exactly. And I would add on to that, we're all that. We're all beautiful. We're all the same. But we see it as being bad if you are not unconditionally loving with conditions. If you're unconditionally loving, that's bad. But if you're unconditionally loving with conditions, that's good because it means you are professional or you have your priorities straight or whatnot. And we don't see people as going through a journey. We see people as a way to gain on who we are. That if that person has their priorities together, then I will love you forever. And that blows my mind. That's not how it should work. And the reason it shouldn't work that way is because that is your biggest flaw in what you call relationships. Is you are always stirring to look for something good or bad in the relationship. If the relationship does not have financial stability, emotional stability, um, if it doesn't have you going out all the time, or a person with a car, or a person with an apartment or house, then it's bad. But we don't see it, especially when we're talking about for people of my generation and those of beyond who are in this world and don't realize that in today's day and age, there's a lot of things going on that make it difficult for people to get to where they need to go. But the best part about this is the fact that it's something to actually push you to teach yourself the importance that materialistic things are not important. And I'm not saying that you simply shouldn't like materialistic things. If you love materialistic things, because I do too, that's perfectly fine. The difference for me, however, is simply, even though I love materialistic things, I'm not worried if they just disappear out of my life. because I can always get more. But I don't see it as a fact that I need a gain off of someone based off materialistic things that they have. What truly creates such an experience is when two love in an experience, in a journey to understand self, that you both can evolve as one throughout whatever you're going through, instead of seeing that that person, what they're doing is bad. There are of course needs of compromise from each other, but as far as that goes, you should always be looking for the love within each other and seeing the beauty within each other, the divinity within each other, that you are constantly in growth, you are constantly in motion and being who you are at your highest form. So don't look at the how a person looks as being what you may consider good or bad in any sense. It's not about that. It's about who you really are under the surface, not what the status quo is, not what the moral standard should say is good or bad, right or wrong, because you have to remember everything is relative. There are no absolutes in here. There is no it's either this way or that way. It's either an and or a both. It's all relative. So what ugly you see in others, you see that simply in yourself. What beauty you see in others, you simply see in yourself. You have to be willing to see how amazing, how divine, how magnificent, how beautiful you truly are, being the gods, the goddesses, and the creators within. And we will be ending it here. So, I appreciate the viewers that have been watching. Shout out to the people who are growing who they are, loving themselves more, pushing themselves, evolving themselves more. Shout out to everybody out there. And just realize how amazing you are, and to know that to know thyself is to know the creator within who you really are. So, to everybody out there, have a good morning, a great afternoon, and a fantastic evening. Namaste.